Hi, welcome back to the CTO Advisor Daily Dose at Datrium for the V. Brown Bag Build Day. Want to learn more about build days in general? Go to vbrownbag.com and there's a link to the V. Brown Bag Build Days. So again, I'm joined with Hugo Patterson, CTO, founder of Datrium, and Devin Hamilton, Director of Systems Engineering for Datrium. And we're going to talk data management. Now, you guys are normally known as a primary storage company. And data management and primary storage to this point has been two different conversations. However, customers want the ability to seamlessly go from their primary data to secondary data in one tier. And why should it be two separate systems? Why do I need a separate backup copy data system in order to manage copy data when it's all perfectly there? A tier one storage array should be able to do this. Tell me about what is the Datrium story around copy data and data management?
Yeah, so historically, serving both data protection or snapshot retention and super high performance have been at odds. You can either optimize for performance and primary storage workloads, or you could maybe optimize for data protection and cost, because the size of retained snapshots can be huge.
If I could, I'd have everything in primary memory and I won't have to worry about speed at all. But there's a cost factor.
Right. So, but Datrium is really a combination of people from VMware and Data Domain. So Data Domain was really the first system that optimized disk-based storage for retention of backup data in a very cost-effective
scale
way.
out secondary storage. Nice, easy target for a lot of our traditional backup solutions. Revolutionized the market.
That's right. But Data Domain, when I was there, we were really focused on that streaming backup data, and we didn't really crack the nut on how to get primary storage performance out of that. Datrium really pushes that technology further to combine through server power, leveraging the servers and local flash in the servers to get you primary storage performance that runs as if it's just local flash inside of the server, but tie that with a scale out data pool for retaining snapshots of the data running in the host in a cost optimized way that is deduplicated, locally compressed, erasure coded, all of that good stuff that makes it cost effective to retain snapshots on disk. And the Datrium DVX really combines those two pieces: primary storage running at the speed of local flash with a scale-out cost-optimized data pool for retention of snapshots.
So Devin, help me break this out practically from a customer perspective.
Sure.
When hyper-converged providers come to me and say, hey, here's a bunch of low-cost storage. That low-cost storage is usually optimized to run workloads and VMs, etc. And then there's a market for secondary storage like Data Domain and a bunch of other vendors that have come about. Two separate systems. How are customers in the field deploying this? What does this look like? Do I have a bunch of super micro servers as JBODs, or what does this look like in the field?
I really appreciate you representing and advocating the questions that we get from the customer on a daily basis. And what I tend to tell them is that we've watched an evolution of x86 compute, which is really the enabling character in what it is that we're doing today, and has provided the limitation or enhancement of these technologies over time. So if you look at how x86 compute has scaled, we are now living in a world where within one framework, we can use a customer server, even a 2-3-year-old server, to do I/O compute, to do pre-calculation for deduplication, to do encryption of that data, to do encryption, or basically compression of that data, and have all those be on-the-fly processes versus any kind of a post-process function. So when you look at how this is deployed, our customers really go kind of one of two ways, or they'll blend. They'll either use servers that they already have, and they're pushing our software out to there, and that's basically much more like the software-defined approach, but the primary storage pool is this data node. So they have a resilient capacity that handles all of the writes and in fact provides you a single namespace for global deduplication, regardless of what servers they bring to the table. And those servers can be dissimilar, and we talked about that before. At the same time, if a customer says, hey, my servers are really old, or I don't want to take them offline and put flash in them because there's no flash in them right now, talk to me about Datrium compute nodes. And so we bring our own compute nodes in, and now they have a turnkey solution. Datrium compute nodes, Datrium data nodes, and those work cohesively together. Of course, those are top-of-the-line brand new servers. They can build them as big and as gnarly as they want. There's one license for all the features and everything, so it's very simple as far as deploying it, consuming it, paying for it. But at the end of the day, a lot of our customers that bring in Datrium compute nodes will also say, well, can I also have some licenses for some of the storage computers that I have laying around, things that I used for various applications before that are legacy, that they're going to move into this cluster and use for additional utility. So we're driving better efficiency, better amortization, better utilization of existing infrastructure in addition to providing them a turnkey solution.
So let's talk around this story of the primary use case for data protection, which is backup. One of the terms that I hear a lot is snapshots. Snapshots aren't backups. So talk to me practically about, okay, I want to use the traditional backup feature of a data protection solution. How do you guys handle the simple concept of backup?
Yeah, so in a traditional kind of array, you're managing storage-centric artifacts like LUNs. And snapshotting a LUN that holds many VMs, running many applications, that's not really backing up that application, right? So, but in the Datrium DVX, we do have replication, but it looks a lot more like a backup application than it looks like a traditional array replication model.
In a traditional array, I can do snapshots, multiple versions of the same set of data, but that's in the same physical array.
Right.
I want to back it up, whether it's to a data domain, to tape, or some other medium. Since you guys have a distributed model, I can back it up to what's the concept that I'm backing it, moving it off to a different, off of that, what we would have considered primary storage before.
Yeah, so it starts by being very VM-centric and app-centric,
right?
So having VSS providers and so forth. So you can define protection groups, sets of VMs to be snapped in a consistent way, and then as a group, those snapshots can be retained locally within the system without having to do a full lift of that data out. But it absolutely needs to be on another system and in another geography to really count as a protected copy.
Right.
And so we also leverage the servers to drive replication to other DVXs. But that replication is of these protection group snapshots. It's very application focused. We have a catalog that can list the snapshots of VMs and applications that are local, that are remote. You can see that all in the one console. And any of those snapshots, whether local or remote, you can clone from them to make a new VM from that from that snapshot, or you can just restore. You can roll back the VM to its previous point in time.
So,
and all of that fine-grained data management.
I think one of the best use cases for this type of technology, replication technology in general, is for disaster recovery. Devin, how are people in the field using this for DR testing?
Yeah, it's an important question. So the customer feedback really drives best practices for us. And so we take a lot of input from the customer. We're very open and transparent. And what we have developed is basically a methodology that says, hey, look, snapshots are very familiar to everybody. And replication is very familiar to everybody. The granularity that we bring to the table isn't necessarily as familiar. And so we do a little bit of education to the customer to say, hey, look, you can develop protection groups and build snapshot policies around individual VMs, groups of VMs, the entire cluster, or even files underneath those VMs, and that you have two constructs that are at your disposal. The first, of course, is there's the data store. And everybody understands the data store in VMware. That's where all the VMs are living, the vDisks, and so on. Underneath that is an independent snap store. And that snap store gives you the agility to come in there and manipulate either snapshots at the primary site or replicas at a secondary site and do things with them. And that could be any of the copy data management functions. That could be, cloning stuff out, replicating it manually to a different location, doing actual restores, or even going also into, declaring a disaster and doing a failover to a secondary site. So really the characters that enable this are to say our snapshot granularity, time-based, allows you to develop groups of snapshots and have that application synchronization. We wrote our own VSS provider so we can integrate there on the Microsoft side. And when you replicate, you're replicating on a per snapshot basis. We are deduplication aware over the wire. The data that's sent over the wire, of course, is encrypted. So you have a great facility for not only security of that data, but efficiency on the wire for bandwidth that you're utilizing. And what you end up with the secondary site is even having a dissimilar architecture, a different number of servers down there. As long as you've got enough capacity to fit the retention depth that you want, you can build that secondary site to be whatever you want it to look like and certainly reduce costs of that secondary site. So DR simply becomes whatever you want to categorize as stuff that needs to come up when you declare a disaster, have enough facility down there to handle that.
So, simple question. How much does this cost? Is this part of the license, an additional license fee by the amount of backup? What's the catch?
Snapshot creation and replication is part of the base package. So if you have a DVX, it can snapshot, and if you get another one, it can replicate, or you can replicate into Amazon, into the public cloud.
So that brings up an interesting point. Obviously, that's a feature of the product. But it's not your primary use case. So obviously you guys don't do everything in data protection space.
Sure.
What about the partner ecosystem?
Yeah, so it's really important that we leverage the partner ecosystem because there are things that we don't do, and you're absolutely right. We wanted to get to the point where we had complete disaster recovery capability at a snapshot granularity and even files underneath and containers underneath the VM itself. But we're not going to do things like single mailbox recovery. That's not the business that we're in. We leverage a very rich partner ecosystem with other solutions that the customer often already has licensed, and what we find is that because of the acceleration at the application layer that DVX provides, we can help them get backup jobs done quicker with those tools that provide granularity. So everybody understands tools like Kroll OnTrack or Veeam or Zerto and things like that. We have best practices and we vetted out how we integrate with them to where if those are on-premise resources the customer already has, we can just make them better.
So Devin, Hugo, I really appreciate you guys joining the CTO Advisor Daily Dose again at Datrium, sponsored by Datrium. Check out the V. Brown Bag material. If you guys want to see this stuff actually working, visit V. Brown Bag where they're building it and give an engineer and customer's view of it.